Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We are excited to have Tom Langhofer here with us today. And Tom and I have really only recently met each other, maybe in the last 4, 5, 6 months. I don't know, something like that. And I had reconnected with Adam Hamilton, who's the pastor of Church of the Resurrection in Kansas City. And then Adam told me he wanted me to meet Tom Langhofer. And so we had coffee, and we've just been kind of getting to know each other here over the last few months. And it's been my blessing for sure. Thank you for being with us, Tom.
Yeah, you bet. My blessing too.
Yeah, so let's jump in. You've got such a fascinating story. Let's start with where you grew up and kind of some of your background growing up in school, and maybe then jump into your work and family stuff. Yeah.
All right. I was born and raised in Lawrence, Kansas. And back when it was just one high school, had a regular, what I consider a sort of a normal family. So I thought, until I was 11, when my dad abruptly told us he was leaving. And so I had an older brother. He was 11 years older. So, and for all practical purposes, I was an only child. Because when I was 11, he was already off at college. And so he left, my dad left, and for another woman, and remarried, whatever the absolute minimum time you could wait to get remarried. And was remarried, and so it was my mom and I, basically. My dad was still in my life to a degree, but he married into a family of 5 kids, and so he kind of, he had other kids to look after now, and so a lot of it was just me and mom. And but before that, one thing I always like to acknowledge is that I was sexually molested as a child between the ages really 9 to 10, 9 to 11, somewhere in there. We had a neighbor who was abusive, sexually abusive to me and some of the other kids, and then also by a very close family friend. And so I buried all that. The neighbor got caught and got arrested and all that, but the family friend never. I never said anything because I just didn't. I buried that all down.
The guy that got caught was the guy that had molested you?
Yes. Yeah, he got caught because he also was molesting other boys in the neighborhood.
So it came out about them, but you never blew the whistle on him. Basically.
I never did, no, but somebody else did.
Somebody else did, yeah.
And then the other person, I never blew the whistle on.
Okay.
And I buried that. Actually, I buried both of them deep down inside. And I've always found it interesting that never came up again, honestly, until I got into recovery.
Yeah.
But I just bring that up because, it's embarrassing. And yet I'm learning when I bring that up, there's usually somebody in the crowd that comes up to me and thanks me for doing that, for being vulnerable, because it's unfortunately not all that uncommon.
Right.
So that's why I bring that up.
Yeah.
I went on.
The statistics are for women are off the charts
Yeah.
that have gone through some kind of abuse, and then
Yeah.
men as, so yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you bet. I went on just, so the divorce happens, and so I'm told I changed, as far as I was always pretty happy-go-lucky, and my parents noticed I changed. I was not as happy, and it was some tough times, but I moved forward and was pretty, I think, normal in school and high school, was pretty popular. I played some sports. I just got along with everybody pretty much. And so went on to college and was president of my fraternity, and
Which college?
I started off at Pittsburgh State University.
Okay.
Yeah, I went there a couple of years, and then ended up moving back to Kansas City, or to Lawrence, to finish up at KU. I had a girlfriend who really wanted me to come back up to KU, so I did that, and she dumped me like 2 months after the school season. So I was like, you got to be kidding me. But anyway, I
ever eat at Chicken Annie's down in Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah, Chicken Annie's, Chicken Mary's.
Chicken Mary's.
Oh yeah,
I've eaten at both of them. Yeah,
you betcha. Jim's Steakhouse. My fraternity brother down there, their family owned Jim's Steakhouse, so we eat there a lot. Yeah. But
yeah, but you're a KU. You're a Jayhawk fan.
I'm a Jayhawk
Grew up
guy.
in Lawrence.
Graduate
from KU. Wow. Okay.
Right.
That's pretty thick.
Kind of had to. Yeah, both my daughters did, and my wife did. So we're kind of.
You have no Missouri grads in your family, huh?
No.
Wow. All right.
No.
Which fraternity, by the way?
Well, interesting story. I was in Pi Kappa Alpha down at Pitt State. And then when I transferred to KU, I had a bunch of friends in the Delta Upsilon DU house. And so I tried the Pike House at KU for a while, but my friends talked me into kind of becoming a social affiliate with the DU house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to go through the pledging and all that stuff again. So I just became a social affiliate with the DU house. So I finished up.
And then were you the president of that one?
No,
or the one in Pittsburgh.
The one in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Good. Where'd you meet your wife at?
I met her after college.
Okay.
Actually, I never knew her at KU. She was a year younger, but we never met. Which we are always surprised by that. But we never met, and we met at a party. After college, I was with some friends, and we were down at Fred Piot's. If that's still, I don't even know if that's still around.
I don't think so. Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, there was this party at a Kay Costello's house." And okay, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know her, so I went there, and it's where I met Marcy. She didn't know me. She came up and introduced herself to me. I was drunk, very drunk. And we had a nice time that night. And when it was all over, she said, I said, well, she goes, you want my number? I said, no, I'll look you up. She goes, well, I'm not in the phone book. That was back when they had phone books, right? And I said, I'll figure it out. Well, the next day I remember calling one of my best friends, and I said, hey, I met this girl, Marcy Flynn. And he said, oh yeah, she's awesome. She's beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And because had he said, oh man, she's a loser, I would never have honestly followed up on that. It's one of our little jokes that I ended up marrying Marcy because of my friend Bo Peters. But I didn't. She was right. She wasn't in the phone book, but I remembered she worked for a leather goods store down the plaza. So I got the yellow pages out and started calling anything leather goods related on the plaza. And it took me, it was the third phone call.
This is how we had to do it back in the day, guys. We had to go to the yellow pages.
Yep. So I called St. Crispin's leather goods store, which was, they sold high-end leather products like briefcases and things like that. And I called, and she answered the phone.
Wow.
And so that's how we met, how I got connected with her, and we got married, and we will celebrate 35 years of marriage in a couple of weeks.
Awesome.
So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I should congratulate her, right?
Yeah. Really.
Yeah,
sure.
she'll listen. So, hey, congratulations.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, good. Yeah, so tell us about your work career, your kids, and kind of bring us into, what we met around was our addiction and recovery world kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, after I got out of college, I went to work for a local bank, First National Bank of Olathe, and got into the real estate lending department. And that's where I met Daryl Rodrock, who ultimately would be my boss. But I left, when you're early in banking, at least this is how it used to be, you had to move around a lot to kind of advance in the corporate banking world. So I was there at First National for a couple of years and went to a bank called Lenexa National Bank. And then I ended up downtown at a bank called Mark Twain Bank, which at that time was the largest single-family real estate lender in the city, as far as I know. And I did real estate lending down there, and that's where I took Daryl. A lot of my customers followed me, and a lot of them went down to Mark Twain with me, and so I did that between all that time, 8 years in the banking world. And I just decided that wasn't something I wanted to do for my career. And we hadn't had any kids yet. And so I just thought, if I'm ever going to move out of that industry, do it now before you start having kids. And so I approached Daryl and told him he needed a general manager, somebody to run his company, because he was getting pretty big at that time. And I talked him into hiring me, and so I went to work for him and stayed with him for 30 years as a general manager. So we had a long, fun.
What was the name of that company?
Rodrock Development.
Okay.
RODR.
Was it commercial?
Residential.
Residential.
We
stuff.
developed single-family subdivisions around mostly Johnson County.
Okay.
And we were the largest by far in Kansas City. We were selling 600 plus homes a year.
Wow. What's single family?
Single family.
Yeah.
Much like what you have here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like Don Julian, those kind of guys. Mm-hmm. Those were they're all in that.
We worked with Don a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did that for a long time, and then after I started working for Daryl is when we started having our children. We had 2 daughters, Catherine and Erin, and so they, we ended up building a home in a Rodrock community, which was a good thing. But of course, I never got away from work. You'd come home and drive through the subdivision, and you've got neighbors who are upset at their builders and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
So we'd be out in the cul-de-sac at night drinking beer, and everybody would be bitching about their builder. And so I never felt like I really got away, at least for the first few years. But so yeah, we just kind of did our own thing and raised the kids. My wife, we made the decision that she would stay home with them. Mm-hmm. She was working for a law firm, Smith, Gill, Fisher and Butts, as their HR director. And so we chose to have her stay home, and she raised the kids. She did an amazing job, and I worked for Rodrock.
Yeah. Where'd your daughters go to high school?
They went to Blue Valley Northwest.
Okay.
Which was a mile or so from our house. So yeah.
Right. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's get into the kind of the whole drinking addiction component.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of where we're headed, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
talk about that. Because, by the way, those who are listening, Tom is the recovery pastor. Is that the right title?
Mm-hmm. Pastor of Recovery
Ministries at Church of the Resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so let's hear a little bit about that story.
Well, I started drinking, so my dad was a functioning alcoholic to the day he died. And which he was 91, when he died.
It's a long life for an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Gee
He
whiz.
drank a lot. And I learned about that later as to partially why. But so he thought it was fun for me to have a beer, sips of his beer. And I remember the first time I was like around 9 years old, having part of his Coors beer when he was mowing the lawn. And then he would fix me on Saturday nights. We call it the Saturday night special. He would fix me a 7-Up cranberry juice and Southern Comfort. He'd put like a little cap full of Southern Comfort in a drink for me. And it used to really piss my mom off, that he's fixing her 10-year-old son, because I would have had to have been no older than 11 because he left at that point. And so that was my first, taste of alcohol. And then he would have beer in the basement refrigerator, and we would steal some of his beer and drink. So I remember getting drunk by age 11.
Wow.
And really liked it. And that went on into junior high. We started getting Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill, and drinking that stuff. And
nasty.
No doubt. And high school, I didn't start doing anything other than liquor until my junior year in high school, when I was at homecoming with my date. And we went to a party and they were smoking weed there, and I tried it for the first time and kind of liked it. And so I started smoking some weed along that from then until I got into college, and I smoked some for a while, my first couple years of college, 3 years probably, and then I quit because it just made me too paranoid. I just started getting paranoid. And I tried other things. I tried Quaaludes, hash, cocaine. Did a fair amount of cocaine for a while, but I never did that much for me for the amount of money it cost. I was pretty cheap. I was like, well, this wasn't that big a deal for me. I did speed, mushrooms. I tried a lot of different things. I never tried acid. Meth was not around that I'm aware of at that time. So I never did anything, never did heroin. None of that. The mushrooms scared me. I did those, and I liked them for the first few hours, and then I didn't like it anymore. And so I tried that, didn't like it, and really just stuck to alcohol at that point. But I was always when you're in the fraternity thing, you're drinking generally. And so I drank a lot all through college, and would drink some during the week, but mostly the weekends. But when I drank to get drunk. There was no casual glass of wine or a beer. I never understood the point of a beer or I didn't really drink wine, but a drink. That didn't make sense. And so when I made a drink, it was always strong. My dad taught me that. So you didn't have a sissy drink. It was always a strong.
Yeah.
And by that, I would say probably 3 or 4 shots in a small, regular drink glass. Or you would just pour it mostly with scotch and a little bit of water. And that's and then I started drinking martinis. But I drank, mostly socially for a while. And then as life went along and I got, into the stress, and it just became easy to drink. It just became easy to drink. But I would say the real crux, the real problem started when we had the recession in 2008. And our company was really strong, but we were feeling a lot of our builders were going out of business. There was a lot of stress, and I started drinking a little bit more. And then a bunch of my construction friends lost their companies, and so we started meeting at lunch, and because there was nothing going on. And what I've learned in life is, idle time is not a good thing for an addict.
A budding alcoholic.
A budding alcoholic. And so, we would meet we would meet for lunch, and I never liked to drink during the day because it was over then. For me, is either if I started drinking during the day, which I did sometimes, like games, football games or whatever, but I had to keep going because it was, that was it. And so we'd start drinking it over the lunch hour, and I just would continue, and so the way I had to continue was I started buying bottles, and I had a bottle in my office. And so and then I started having bottles at our various job sites, like where we had model homes, and I could hide them in the model homes. And so it became slowly. So my progression went from drinking mostly on the weekends to drinking some evenings during the week, to drinking every evening, to drinking over the lunch hour, which would then carry on into the evening. So that all went on, and then it progressed to drinking in the morning when I woke up, and that was, as weird as it sounds, the morning drunk was fun for a while because you haven't had anything to eat. You wake up, you start taking a few shots right out of the bottle, and it was a pretty good buzz, And I remember that at first, hey, this is kind of fun. And then, but the problem is you had to keep working, and I didn't miss work because of it. I would go to work drunk at 8 in the morning or 7:30 or whatever time we had jobs, depending upon what we had going on. And that's kind of what I did. And it got to the point where I started getting scared because we would be out on the cul-de-sac in the evening, and now I was having a lot of anxiety. And I remember sitting there one night and I said, wait a minute, this is scaring me because I'm drinking to escape from anxiety and fear and life. And now the drinking is causing me more anxiety, and that really started scaring me. And I wasn't sleeping well at night, so I started getting Ambien, and I would cut it up into little bitty pieces and put it in a baggie, and I'd carry it around with me during the day. And so when I started having anxiety, I would pop like a quarter or so of an Ambien, and that would take the edge off. But it would, as you might guess, it would make me pretty lethargic, during the day too. So I was drinking vodka, taking an Ambien, which over the course of the day, I was probably taking one Ambien over the course of the day. And so I was having to drink a fair amount of coffee too, so it was just, so it was just a vicious cycle. Yeah. And then I would wake up at 2 a.m. I'd go down and take a couple shots and take some more Ambien and go back to sleep. And one night I woke up.
I was doing that with Xanax instead of Ambien.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
But not during, I was only doing the Xanax at night, but if I was home wanting to take a nap or do this or that, the other, I was taking shots during the day and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I did the Xanax too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
But I didn't like that as much. So, I still had it, I still took it, but Ambien had Klonopin too. I was doing some Klonopin. My doctor actually prescribed me the Klonopin. That was a little later on though. I'll get into that in a minute. But I woke up in the night about 2 a.m. and the only way I could describe it is like my whole body was on fire. I felt like I was being stuck with hot needles throughout my whole body. My entire body was just on fire, and it scared me to death. I went downstairs, I took a couple shots of vodka, and I felt when I drank it, I felt my whole body burning. And so I woke up my wife, and basically she laid with me the whole night, got me through the night. We got up and went to the emergency room, and it just so happened I had not been really going to a doctor much, but it just so happened that my primary care doctor was the on-call physician at Shawnee Mission Medical Center, and we determined I was having a nervous breakdown, and he found out at that point that I was drinking a quart of vodka a day, which he said, I remember when I told him that, I was expecting him to come unglued, and he just said, well, that's quite a bit. And he said, maybe, he said, can you stop for 30 days? Can you try to stop for 30 days? And I was like, well, not without help, so I medically detoxed. I went home, isolated for 3 days, couldn't leave the house. It was just so scary. It was so debilitating. And I medically detoxed, and he put me on Lexapro, anxiety medication. And so I went 30 days without drinking. And at that point, I thought I had things under control. I was I was like, I'm going to make 30 days, but I kept hearing 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. And so I hit 30 days, and I was like, yes, I got this. I proved that I didn't have to drink, that I could not, I could stop. And so I started drinking again, and I drank in moderation I remember we went to some friend's house, and I had a few drinks, and it was weird. It felt weird to start drinking again. But so I drank that weekend, and then I drank the next weekend, just on the weekends. And then something happened, and it just opened back up, and I went right back to where I was before, but drank even more and started. So my doctor had given me Klonopin to help with the anxiety, in addition to the Lexapro, which the Lexapro was like, don't drink alcohol while taking this, right?
Right.
But there was a little fine print, unless you're Tom Langhofer. And then you see there was fine print on there. Yeah, so I found that. So I could drink with the Lexapro. So I went right back to it. And I would wait till my wife would hop in the shower. In the morning, I'd run down to the garage. I had a bottle hidden in the garage, and I would just take 4 or 5 straight shots, straight glugs right out of the bottle, run back up into bed. And that's how I started my day. And I drank, all day. I would find places where I could pass out for an hour or so and during the day, and then wake up and start all over. And I would end up, passing out on the couch at bed. And then I was very involved in our church as a volunteer. I was a small group leader for late night men's program. We had Jeff Kirby, who's my mentor. I was a small group leader for him, and I was leading a group of men on Tuesday nights, and I was always drunk. When I was telling them that they needed Jesus in their life, and I was veering further and further away. So it was very hypocritical. I was involved with our traffic ministry. It's a big church, so we have parking attendants. I'd be out there directing traffic, and I would be drunk on Sunday mornings directing traffic. And then I had little airplane bottles in my socks. I put them in my socks, like 4 to 6 of them, 3 on a side, 2 to 3 on a side. And then I would, you didn't put any more than that because they would clank when you walked. So you didn't want to, what's that noise? Oh, it's my little alcohol bottles I brought to church.
Right.
So in between services, I would pop down 2 or 3 of those. And so, I was also on so we had this website, And I was on the front. So when you went to Church of the Resurrection website, my face would pop up on there. I don't know how that got on there, but I was the poster child, I guess, so to speak, of our church. And so I was just filled with so much guilt and shame. And so, as an alcoholic, what do? You just drink more to run, so you can escape from that guilt and shame. And I was on a bank board, and I was drinking before our board meetings. I chaired economic development for the city of Shawnee, and was on the chamber board. I drank before I'd have board meetings or certainly at events. I was on the economic development board for the city of Olathe, and I would drink before I'd go to those board meetings. And so it consumed my life. Totally consumed my life. I coached my younger daughter's softball and basketball teams, and I was drunk during games. And I remember one of my pitchers, she goes, "Coach, have you had a beer?" And it was so embarrassing. I was like, no. And I had, it wasn't beer. I didn't mess around with beer really. I went straight for the hard stuff. And so that was my life, and so everything I did evolved around making sure I had alcohol.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. So how did you, let's dial forward to getting into both recovery and your current ministry, because you've been the recovery pastor at Church of the Resurrection now for how long?
A little over 4 years.
Over 4 years. So yeah, let's
okay.
Get us into that space, and then I want to talk about your, what you've recently gone through as well. Okay, if you're okay with that.
Yeah. So I woke up one morning, and I woke up and I said, "What the hell am I doing? I'm dying." My health was bad. My blood pressure was high. Everything was going wrong. And my marriage I didn't realize how bad shape it was in. But I was like, God, I'm dying, and all I could say, because I was mad at God, very mad at God, and I just knew for sure he was not pleased with me. So I didn't have any relationship with God really, except a hypocritical one. And I just said, God, man, I don't deserve any real prayers, or I didn't feel like I did. But I just said, God, please help. Please help. And it's not like I felt my spirit come on me and everything changed. That is not what happened at all. But what did happen is I suddenly had the courage to reach out. So I went to Jeff Kirby and told him what was going on, and he said, "Well, I don't know what to do with you, but I got a friend who's in AA, who, I think can help you. Would you want to talk to him?" I said, "Yeah, I got to do something." So I went to had lunch with this guy, Rick, and Jeff and I drank before I went to lunch because that's what I did. And just hit it off with Rick. And, when you're in your addiction and when you're to that point, you feel like you're all alone, like there's nobody can understand what you're going through. You're the only one that's done what you've done. Nobody else has been where you've been. And when I had lunch with Rick, I quickly learned that I wasn't alone. And his story was very similar to mine. He had I think a 1.5 year sobriety at that point, which I couldn't even fathom. But he was happy. He was laughing. He was telling me all the stupid things he did. And we just we related. And he said, you want to go to an AA meeting? I was like, okay. So I met him in the parking lot of South Leawood the next night. I drank before I went because, again, I was scared, very scared. And I went to my first AA meeting, and it was a first step meeting. They just said, anybody here for the very first time? I raised my hand, not knowing what that was going to create, and so I went into a first step meeting, and I learned right then, I don't know how many were in that meeting, probably 30, something like that, men and women. And
30 people in your first step meeting?
No, that we didn't go to a different meeting. We just stayed in that.
Oh, okay.
We stayed
so
in
they
there.
turned the whole meeting into a first step meeting.
They turned the whole meeting into a first step meeting.
My first one, I went to, like 4 guys or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they kind of separated.
Yeah, that's normal. Yeah. I'd say it's normal, but for some reason they didn't do that. They just kept me in there.
Yeah, okay.
And I really, I saw people laughing. I saw people reasonably happy, and I saw God on the wall, in the 12 steps, which I was like, wow, I didn't know God was involved in AA. And I just really, so I walked out of there. This is a pretty cool deal. I didn't stop drinking that first night. I drank that night, and then I drank Friday night.
What year was this?
2010. January. Okay. My sobriety date is January 15th, 2010.
Okay.
And so I drank that Friday night a lot, and then I got up Saturday morning and I said, I'm done. And I went to an AA meeting on Saturday morning, went to another meeting that day, and I was enthralled with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did the 90 meetings in 90 days. Mm-hmm. Rick became my sponsor. I did whatever he told me to do. Got me a big book, got a 12 and 12. I just hit it. And I did the 90 and 90. It just changed my life. And I was 2 weeks into the program, and I'll never forget this. I was sitting there in the meeting, and I felt God's presence. And it's not like I heard voices, but I just felt God tell me, okay, I saved your ass. And so now I want you to help people find sobriety through me. And I'll never forget that. And I'd never had a spiritual feeling with God before. I'll call it a Holy Spirit moment. I'd never had anything like that. And so it was very weird, but I felt it, And so I, early on, man, I felt like I wanted to sponsor people. My sponsor's like, you can't sponsor people. Are you crazy? You're just 30 days into this deal. He said, you can be of service, you can help others. Well, what I learned is, even a guy with a couple weeks sobriety, for the newcomer that walks in the door, 2 weeks sobriety is a big deal. And so I would see people, I had 30 days at that point or so, and see people coming in for the first time, and I would talk to them and say, I just got 30 days. How'd you do it? Because I remember I couldn't relate to the guy that had 20 or 30 years when I walked out. That was like, that's not achievable. But somebody that had 30 days, I could connect with that person, So I started doing that. I started connecting with the newcomers when they walked in as this hotshot 30-day sober guy, And so I did that, and then after a while, I started going to Shawnee Mission Detox and would help lead the meetings there, even though I couldn't lead them because I didn't have enough sobriety. But I would go to the meetings and I would help.
Yeah. So when did you become recovery pastor at Church of Resurrection?
So that led to this journey of helping people find sobriety through Christ, and I did a big part of it by going to I shared my testimony at church one Tuesday night with Jeff to a couple hundred guys, and they told me about this place called Healing House, and said, hey, why don't you, we're going to play down there, why don't you go with us? I didn't know anything about this place at all, but I'd been going around to the church and to anybody that wanted to listen to me saying, I want to help people find sobriety. And so I go down to Healing House, I get in enthralled with this organization. I felt the Holy Spirit tell me that's where I needed to be. And so I started helping people, which is Healing House is a faith-based transitional living organization.
Yeah. I hope to maybe interview.
Yeah, you will. We'll make that
Bob
happen.
and Joe from there to introduce people. I interviewed Welcome House. I interviewed Jamie Boyle about a year ago. And I'd love to. Yeah. Because you've introduced me to Healing House, and I've really really loved what they're doing. It's great. Yeah.
Well, that's really what prompted. So I really felt that desire to continue that ministry or my journey. And then at the church, I became what's called a congregational care minister, because what I learned is most pastors don't know what to do with drunks or addicts. They start praying on them. They do, and so which sounds good in theory, but for most of us, at least for me and many I know, you're not in a good relationship with God when you are in your addiction, and so to have some pastor praying on you is a little overwhelming. And I remember Jeff Kirby and I went on to visit a guy at Starbucks one day, and he was wasted. And Jeff immediately puts his hand on the guy and starts praying for the Holy Spirit, and the guy just, rah! And I was like, Jeff, I think there's a better way to do this. And so I took over, and I just started talking to him,
Yeah.
And so the church liked that. And so I became the guy that the church pastors called when they needed help with somebody struggling with addiction. And I became a care minister. And so I went through training, and I did that for 6 years. But I felt there was something more, so I'm running Rod Rock Development, and my boss was incredibly generous with me, allowing me to go do church stuff, and because he saw it was changing me. And Karen Lampe was the executive pastor for congregational care. And I would go in to see her and say, hey, I'm just here. I don't know why. And we would talk because I knew there was something else. And one day I was in there and sitting down. I said, Karen, I don't know why I'm here, but I just felt I needed to sit down with you again. And she said, well, so we are looking to build a recovery ministry at the church. And they did celebrate recovery for a while. And kind of dabbled in recovery, but never really had, they had an AA group that met there, an Al-Anon that met there, but they were wanting to take it to a whole different level. And so Karen said, this is what we're going to do, and you're our guy. It's like, well, okay, let's talk. She goes, yeah, well, we want you to become a pastor. And I'm like, well, why? Why can't I just start a recovery ministry for the church? Because I'm 55 at this point. And I said, Karen, I'm 55. I've done all the schooling I want to do. I'm past all that. And she goes, well, this is why. Because, as you build this ministry, you're going to have people that follow you, and we want you to be able to care for them. We want you to be able to be their pastor when they struggle, when they have successes and they remarry or want you to marry them or baptize them, or unfortunately people die from this disease, and we want you to be their pastor through the death of for families. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds interesting. But I got to convince my wife, because I had put her through hell, and as I've said, I would have left me if I was her, but she didn't. She stuck with me, and so I was on board with it. I think it was still very scary, but I told her about it, and she freaked out because she was like, "Man, we're just getting back to some normalcy, and you're going to do this." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do anything if you don't want me to, because I do not want to mess up our, we were really starting to do good in our relationship." And but the bottom line is, over the course of a year, I went to some summits and some interviews and everything that I, kind of just take it a little further and everything. I was just like, yeah, this is for me. This is for me. So after a year, she, on our 31st anniversary, I think it was, she said, you go for it.
Yeah.
So
you quit your job.
I quit my job. I went into ministry and became a pastor. And that's what I'm doing.
The ministry has grown now. It's to several hundred people from best I can tell. I've gone to the Leawood location on Thursday nights. I've been on a Zoom meeting with you. Went to the downtown opening. So
it's
amazing.
It's been fun. We have, over the course of a week. So what I've gotten is just I've connected with a lot of different people in recovery, and we have 13 different groups that meet now at the church, and plus we work with Crossroads and Full Circle and other organizations. We have about 850 people a week come to our various recovery programs throughout the week.
So cool.
So it's crazy.
It's awesome.
The point I'm trying to do is to raise awareness to addiction and to rid the stigma that goes along with it. That's really what I'm aside from trying to help people find sobriety. And it isn't all about finding sobriety through Christ. I mean, that's who saved my life. But, we have Smart Recovery, we have traditional AA, so I just want people to find sobriety. And however they get to it, I just want them to know they can walk into the doors of our church and hopefully feel not judged, and they're not going to get a sermon on Christianity unless they want one. But, we're very specific. I don't want anybody to force this on anybody.
Yeah. So kind of, we're getting close to wrapping this up, but so just a few years, so you've been sober now for 6 years, roughly? Right,
now it'll be 12 years.
Oh, sorry, 12 years. Yeah. Okay, I got 12 years.
2010.
So, okay, 2010, sorry. I don't know why I was thinking 2015, but 2010. You've been the recovery pastor for 4 years.
4 years.
But 2 years ago, you're leading this ministry, it's growing, you're helping people all over, and then you end up having such a tragedy, and while you're, share a little bit about that, whatever you're comfortable.
Yeah. Well, in my sobriety, the things I've learned is you make a list of things that could triggers that could cause you the chance to relapse. Well, one of them was the death of a parent. Okay, so I always worried about losing my mom or dad, that would be a deal breaker. Well, 4 or so years ago, my dad died, and I struggle with that a little bit. Well, I struggle with it a lot, but from a recovery standpoint, I did pretty good. Well, 6 months later, my mom died. And so I had the loss of both my parents in a 6-month time period. But I knew what to do. And so I was prepared for all that. Then I lost my best friend, who was my sponsor for 6 years. He died from cancer. That was a big blow. And then we lost my mother-in-law, and that was a big blow because she became my mother, really, so to speak. So we had some pretty significant losses. But on August 2nd, 2019, my 25-year-old daughter was shot and killed down at the Crossroads district on First Fridays by a random bullet. 2 guys got in a fight. One guy took out a gun, fired 9 shots in the crowd. One of them hit my daughter and killed her. And you talk about something that changes your life. I never considered putting that on my trigger list. I just never thought about the loss of a child.
Yeah.
And, I've performed several funerals for people that lost children to overdoses and things like that. And I thought I understood the loss, the feelings that they had, the grief that they had. And I learned that I didn't have a clue. And so the loss of my daughter, Erin, who was a budding social worker at Rosebrooks Domestic Violence Center, the loss of her, you take the loss of all the losses I'd had to that point in my life times 1,000. Doesn't express the grief and pain of losing a child. And so that threw me in a tailspin. And that was on a Friday night. We got the word about 10 o'clock that night, and we didn't know where it was, or we just got her boyfriend's mom called and said, Erin's been shot. We don't know exactly where, somewhere around 19th and Main. We got in the car, started driving, didn't even know exactly where to go, but Marcy pinged her phone, and she was at Truman Medical Center, and we got there, and she'd already died. They wouldn't even let us see her because she was evidence. And so, I just remember, I just crying uncontrollably for months. But I remember on Sunday I got up and I because I was scared. I was scared that I might drink. And so I went to my 1 o'clock Sunday meeting, and I just went in there, and apparently people knew I was coming because it was full, packed. And I just sat in there and I cried. I just bawled my eyes out, and I went, and I was told, I went in there and said, I'm just scared to death and I'm going to drink. Didn't have the feeling to drink, but I just was scared. I thought, man, this is it. This is going to take. And I went in there. I said, I'm scared. And I remember this long timer sitting next to me. He told me to call him a long timer because he said the old timers are the ones that are dead. And he said, Tom, I'd be scared if you weren't scared. But he said, you just keep coming to meetings, you keep doing what you're told, and you keep a relationship with God, and you don't have to drink no matter what. I said, yeah, but I got a pretty big no matter what. And he said, I understand, and I can't relate to that. But I do think this program will work if you follow what you've been taught. And so, we got through the funeral. The last 2 years had been hell because not only did we have to mourn the loss of Erin, we had to go through the legal process. They caught the man. We had to go to hearings. The legal process sucks. It's just a tough, and it's just the way it is. So for 2+ years, we had to go through trial, hearings, appeals, extensions, all this sort of stuff. And we never could really grieve, and so for 2 years we had that hanging over us. And finally he pleaded guilty, and the sentencing was in July. But, to go into the courtroom and hear in graphic detail how your daughter was murdered is indescribable. But I think what I'm so proud of is that I never had a desire to drink. Never. And I owe it to this program of recovery. And, and I know a lot of people were watching me. Can Langhofer do this? And so I felt that in a good way. I felt a lot of accountability. So my sponsor told me, he said, Tom, as best as you can, keep your routine as best as you can. So even during the grief in the first week, I would get up and I'd exercise and I'd do my devotions every day because I was not mad at God. I don't get God in a lot of ways. I don't understand how God works, and Jesus is my higher power. I don't understand, but what I do believe is that Jesus was with me the whole time and carried me through that. And I think that he works through people. And so I saw my AA friends, Christian, non-Christian, just helping me. And I believe God worked through the people in the halls of AA and my church. My church has been amazing for me, and my friends, family. I mean, we had 2,500 people at the funeral for my daughter. Blew me away. So, you know, Fred, it's the worst thing that could ever happen. And every single day I get a gut punch multiple times throughout the day. Just that, like, did that really, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
You know, so, but you know, I guess what I try to tell people when I hear them saying that, you know, I'm thinking of drinking and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I understand, you know, I've been there, but I said, you don't have to drink no matter what. And when they hear my no matter what, you know, I think it gives some credibility, because I don't know what could be worse. I don't know what could be worse. If there's something worse than losing a child that you're madly in love with, then I don't know what it would be. But I have stayed sober through all that. And so I think I'm a living example of you don't have to drink no matter what.
Yeah. I can't imagine. One of the long timers at the hall that I go to has gone through, I think the death of 3 wives, and hasn't drunk, you know. But you hear those stories and it's just, you know, well, I think, you know, just from my short exposure to core recovery, Church of the Resurrection recovery, that just I've watched, you know, I've just kind of watched you with the people, and you know, I've just seen people have such an amazing love for you, a great respect for you, you know. It's just, yeah, thanks for,
yeah,
sorry, but
well, it's not me, my friend.
Yeah,
it's not me.
Thanks for what you've committed yourself to, and how you've allowed God to use you.
Yeah.
I agree. I can't imagine a harder thing to go through.
Yeah.
I've had some close friends go through the loss of a child, but under different kind of circumstances. So, yeah. Well, God bless you. Thank you for being a part of our podcast and doing this interview with Spirituality Adventures. Why don't we wrap this up by just telling people how they can connect with what's going on at Core Recovery, and you know, if people want to connect.
Thank you. Sure.
Somebody wants to share this with a friend or something like that, I think it'd be.
So we have a website. You can go to the main Church of the Resurrection website, which is www.core.org/recovery. And on there we have a breakdown of all our different support groups. We have testimonies every Thursday night. So basically at 5:30 we have a meal, free meal. 6:15 we have a testimony, which you shared yours last week.
Right.
And then at 7 o'clock we break into groups.
Yeah. Do you record those and post those?
So my point is on our website, we record those and put them on the website. Mm-hmm. So we have a whole library of previous testimonies. Mm-hmm. We have a detail of all our different support groups. We also have programs running at our downtown and Overland Park location, soon to be starting them at our Blue Springs and our Latha location. Those will be up and running before the end of the year. But we also have other resources. We have a relationship with Shatterproof, which is a nonprofit organization. We have a link on there that people can get help through Shatterproof. We have a link through First Call. So we just have a lot of support options for people. And then my contact information is on there if people want to reach out to me, but I'm happy to give my email address on here if you...
Sure.
Okay, it's tom.langhofer, it's Langhofer at cor.org. So tom.langhofer at cor.org. And you can reach out to me, and happy to connect you. You know, we have a whole bunch of care ministers who are in recovery that help. We have a recovery committee. I mean, we're trying, and it's not just for members of the church by any means. In fact, we're trying to get out,
Right.
around the city. So you don't have to be Christian. You don't have to have any faith. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, we just want people to feel welcomed to it. It's a place to go where you can feel safe. And a big emphasis is on the family. You know, we have family support groups because the family is often the one that suffers more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have 3 different support groups for families.
Right. Like maybe even something similar to Al-Anon.
Yeah. We have Al-Anon. We have a faith-based group called Family Hope. We have Smart Recovery for family and friends. We have Codependent Anonymous. We have sex and porn addiction. We have eating disorder. We have a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for being on Spirituality Adventures. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. You've got a wealth of resources here to access or pass on to maybe a friend or family member that you know might need this. And so thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.